Unfortunately, when you love a person and have strong feelings for them, you can hardly control the emotions that sometimes spill out. It happened to me when I saw the love of my life dancing in the arms of some man. My world turned upside down. I had jealousy, anger, and something else. As she entered the room, a brief silence fell, disrupting the usual lively atmosphere of Professor Wade's class. Professor Wade, a large, hairy man known for his humor and kindness, carried an aura of intimidation. However, he had yet to arrive, and the basketball players at the back continued their boisterous conversation, attempting to impress their friends and any interested girls. Upon noticing the sudden quiet, I anticipated Professor Wade's entrance, but instead, it was someone else entirely. She stood tall, nearly 6 feet, with long dark hair accented by auburn highlights cascading down her back in soft waves. Her beauty could have rivaled that which launched 1,000 ships. Clad in strategically ripped jeans, revealing her smooth tanned legs, she wore a t-shirt emblazoned with the phrase "Thunderbolts and Lightning," very, very frightening me, along with a signature from Galileo and an image of the astronomer. I adored the shirt, and what lay beneath was breathtaking. She was stunning, absolutely stunning. The jeans hugged her figure perfectly as well. Scanning the room, she caught sight of one of the guys at the back making a crude remark. "Hey, gorgeous, we've got a seat back here." Her glance silenced him instantly, and she began to make her way to the front of the room. Towards me. I always chose a seat at the front to avoid distractions. The chair beside me was vacant, and she gracefully placed her backpack on the floor before sitting down. As she passed by, I caught a subtle hint of her perfume. It was Creed, Windflowers. I recognized the scent because my sister wore it, and I knew its price from buying gifts for Allie. She glanced over at me, and her rich tan complexion lit up with a radiant smile. "Hi, I'm Donovan," she introduced herself. "But don't call me Donna." I attempted to respond, but all that came out was a pitiful croak as my vocal cords seemed to fail me. She chuckled. Clearing my throat, I tried again. "No, I won't," I managed. "I'm Shaw. You can call me Shaw." She chuckled, extending her hand with its long, slender, cool fingers to clasp mine. I couldn't believe my luck in that moment. Just as Professor Wade entered, she leaned in and whispered, Shaw, I'll need that hand for taking notes." Suddenly realizing I was still holding her hand, I felt mortified, but then we both burst into laughter. Wade glanced at us as he set down his bag. "Everything all right over there, Shaw?" I composed myself. "Yeah, all good." He glanced at Donovan and did a double take. "Well, it seems like it," he remarked. As Wade began his lecture, a lively debate ensued. In our Western civilization class, about a dozen of us thoroughly enjoyed Wade's teaching. To my surprise, Donovan jumped right into the discussion, and she was sharp, confident in her opinions and unafraid to voice them. She utilized her iPad for note-taking, and I noticed she was also recording the lecture. As we tidied up our belongings after class, she remarked, "Shaw, don't you take notes?" No, I prefer to listen." "You never take notes?" "No. I find I don't really need them, Donovan." "What's your GPA?" she inquired. I chuckled. "Wow, you sure do ask a lot of questions, Donovan. Is there a specific reason you're interested in my GPA?" She blushed slightly, which complemented her complexion beautifully. "I apologize. I recently transferred here, and I'm looking for study partners." "It's 384, I replied. "What did you get the B in?" she questioned. Now it was my turn to feel embarrassed. "Well, I hate to admit it, but it had to do with human attractiveness." "How did you know it was only one case?" "I did the calculations," she said, then burst into laughter. After a moment, I joined in, and she linked her hand through my arm as we walked out. "Stick with me, Tiger," she said. "We'll improve on that subject. I happen to excel in it." I could easily believe she was. She exuded sensuality, practically declaring in bright neon letters, "I am a goddess." "Where are we headed?" she inquired. "Well, this is my final class," I replied. I was planning to head over to the student union for some ping pong. They organize a table tennis tournament every semester, and I'm participating. Are you skilled at it? She queried. I haven't lost a match in 7 years, I boasted. Do you play? I do, she acknowledged, although I've had my losses in the past 7 years. Let's go. I'll be your enthusiastic supporter. During our journey, I discovered that her surname was Mace. Her father held a prominent position at the university, occupying an endowed chair in humanities, and they had relocated from San Diego, her hometown. Have you always lived here? She inquired. For as long as I can remember, I replied. I was born in Portland, but we moved here when I was around 2. My dad works for Raytheon Missile Systems. What's your field of study? She questioned. I'm majoring in electronic engineering with a minor in philosophy. After I realized that my childhood desire to study human attractiveness was not feasible, engineering seemed to me a logical path. She chuckled. You're quite funny, she remarked. Leaning in, she whispered, and rather attractive too. I was left speechless by that, scrambling for a clever response. Fortunately, she came to my rescue. I'm majoring in biochemistry. My goal is to pursue drug research. Well, that sounds fascinating, and I'm sure you'll excel at it, I replied. Tell me about not taking notes. I have a pretty good memory, I explained. I attempted to take notes, but it felt like a distraction from the lecture. I find that I learn better just by listening. However, if there are lists or specific terms, I'll jot those down. I've kind of developed my own system. Will you study with me? She inquired. I'll do anything with you that you'll allow, I assured her. She beamed affectionately at me, and in that moment, I decided that if she ever needed someone taken care of, I'd be her guy. I was familiar with the other participants in the tournament. We all played and joked together regularly. I think they were a bit surprised when I showed up with Donovan on my arm. I introduced her to everyone, and we played some matches to warm up. Donovan was an exceptional player. I believed she could outmatch most of the guys in the tournament. She used a shallow shake-hand grip while I employed a penhold grip I had picked up from a Chinese roommate. She had me sweating, and soon it was time for my first match. I emerged victorious with ease, and we took a break to watch other games. Celia Langford invited Donovan to play, and I observed as Donovan completely dominated her opponent. In the second round, I faced off against my friend Curtis, who was the second-best player in the tournament. It was unfortunate because he likely would have reached the final if he had been luckier in the draw. It was a close match, as it always was when I played against him. But once again, I emerged triumphant. The third round of the game proved to be quite manageable, allowing me to clinch the $100 prize. Donovan, brimming with charisma, leaned in and planted a kiss on my cheek. Well, now you can treat me to dinner, she teased. I'd gladly take you out, I responded. What time suits you, and where should I pick you up? After exchanging details, we settled on dining at 7, which meant I'd be fetching her at 6:30. Another peck on the cheek, and she disappeared, leaving behind only a faint hint of windflowers. I made my way home, still reeling from the encounter. Thoughts of that captivating woman consumed me. I couldn't fathom why she chose me, but it was evident that she had. I wasn't entirely lacking in appeal. I knew I presented decently and never struggled to find companionship. Standing tall, with a decent physique honed since 8th grade, perhaps she found that appealing. Whatever the reason, I was utterly infatuated, feeling on top of the world. While she had looked striking in her school attire, her evening ensemble rendered her truly breathtaking. Clad in a creamy tan sweater dress, both shoulders exposed, it accentuated her curves flawlessly. She was aware of her allure, however, she didn't flaunt it excessively like many other women of her beauty. Yet she carried herself with confidence, showcasing her assets. I hadn't encountered anyone quite like her before. I assisted her inside. I owned one of the new Ford Broncos, the Black Diamond with the Sasquatch package. It was a bit tall, and as I helped her in, I got a clear view of her tan, muscular legs stretching for about a mile. Once she settled in, I circled around and climbed in myself. "Nice," she remarked. "Do you have a job, Shaw? How did you manage to afford this?" "No job," I replied. "I had one lined up, but my father intervened. As I mentioned, he works at Raytheon and holds significant sway there. He wanted me to focus on my education and enjoying my youth. He offered to get me any car within reason, and this is what I chose. I enjoy exploring the desert, and this vehicle is perfect for it. He also covers my rent and provides me with spending money within limits. I really like this car." I affectionately tapped the dashboard. "And you?" I asked. "Well, I don't have a traditional job, but I do get paid." "For what?" "I accompany my dad to social events. I sort of act as a hostess, and they compensate me generously." "Ah, does your mom not enjoy socializing?" "I have no clue," she replied. "I haven't seen her in about 10 years. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to touch on a sensitive topic." She chuckled. "No worries. You couldn't have known." "My parents are divorced," I shared. "I used to live with my mom until last year, but my dad is still in the picture, and I spend quite a bit of time with him. They just drifted apart. They're not enemies or anything." "Where do you live now?" she inquired. "I have an apartment and a roommate. Keith is a bit of a computer geek. He's a good guy, just a bit awkward." I deduced she must reside with her father, given that I had picked her up from an upscale residence, unlikely for a student to inhabit alone. I escorted her to the grill at Hacienda del Sol. With reservations secured, we arrived punctually. Donovan, are you of legal drinking age?" I inquired. She giggled. "Yes, I'm 23, and you?" 24, I replied. The dining experience was delightful, and the company, even more so. I couldn't resist asking, "Donovan, are we simply study partners? Or may I invite you out on dates? Are you involved with someone?" She clasped my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "No boyfriend. Are you vying for the position?" I chuckled. "Absolutely, I mean, who wouldn't, Donovan?" Her smile widened, accompanied by a slight blush. "That's very kind. I'd enjoy going on dates with you and being study partners, but I'm not seeking a serious relationship at the moment. I'm 23, focused on completing my degree, applying to graduate school, and launching my career before I consider anything like that. Do you understand? Are you okay with that?" "I do," I affirmed. "My plans align somewhat." When I escorted her home, I experienced my first kiss with her, savoring the luscious sweetness of her lips. I was certain that moment would be etched in my memory forever. I encountered her regularly in Wade's class on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and she consistently chose to sit beside me. Thursdays were our study sessions at my place, while Fridays and Saturdays were reserved for our dates. Occasionally, she had university events to attend with her father on weekends, leaving me curious about those occasions. Yet remaining outside that social circle kept me in the dark. Although I met her father and found him amiable enough, it was evident from our initial encounter that we wouldn't form a close bond. He was the type to flaunt his credentials, insisting on being addressed as Dr. Mace, exuding an air of pomposity and pretentiousness. I often pondered how someone so self-important could have raised a daughter like Donovan. Despite our differences, she admired him, and we managed to maintain a civil relationship. Donovan was enigmatic at times. Despite spending significant time together, I knew little about her activities when we were apart, which occasionally troubled me. However, her unwavering dedication when we were together made me feel like the center of her universe. Our relationship status was a topic rarely broached between us. Were we officially a couple, or just friends spending time together? The perception of others leaned towards us being together, but I needed clarity, so I raised the issue. "Are you my girlfriend, Donovan?" I inquired during a car ride home from the movies. Do you want me to be? She responded. Absolutely, I affirmed. Well, you do have to ask properly if you want answers, she remarked. I thought I just did, I countered. No, you asked if I am. If you want me to be your girlfriend, you have to ask me to be your girlfriend, she clarified. Donovan, will you be my girlfriend? I asked, taking her hand. She interlocked her fingers with mine. I thought I already was, she teased. I chuckled. You're exasperating, she laughed. That's part of being in a relationship, you know. What? I inquired. When you're engaged in a conversation and suddenly you find yourself sighing in regret. Essentially, you still care for them, and all, but they just uttered something so absurdly crazy that you lament knowing them. Then they chuckle like a manic gremlin and contemplate the next utterly bizarre thing they're going to say when you eventually respond with a comeback. You're quite a character, I remarked. There's something seriously off about you. But seeing as I have you trapped in the car, I'll take this opportunity to ask you again. Do you want to be my girlfriend, Donovan? Oh, absolutely, may I? I nodded. Consider it official. Now that it's official, what shall we do? She inquired. Whatever we please, I replied. Can I suggest something? She queried. Your wish is my command. All right. How long have we known each other, Shaw? For years, I responded. She chuckled. No, really. 4 months and 19 days, I stated. Impressive, Shaw. You remember to the day. I think that's sufficient, she declared. I want to spend the night with you. Are you serious? She gave me one of her trademark looks, raising an eyebrow. Haven't you even considered it? Look at me. I'm adorable. I couldn't help but chuckle. Yeah, I get it. You're more than just cute, Donovan. You're the most attractive woman I've ever laid eyes on. Of course I've considered it. Honestly, I think about it all the time. I didn't know if you were ready for that right now. Listen, clueless, she retorted. What exactly do I have to do? I practically live with you. I kiss you every time you drop me home. For God's sake, Shaw. I'm always getting cozy with you, and I was starting to wonder if you were gay. I chuckled. I'm definitely not. It's just, you're not like anyone else I've ever met, Donovan. I was willing to wait as long as it took. You mean a lot to me, and I didn't want to pressure you or push you away. Oh, that's really sweet, she said. You won't scare me off. I think you're special, too. That's why I want to spend the night with you. I think I love you, Shaw. I'm not promiscuous. I was stunned. Wow. Did she really think she loved me? Well, I knew for sure that I loved her, and in that moment I felt like the luckiest guy alive. Take me home, she said. I need to grab my things and talk to Dad. That caught me off guard. Seriously? You're going to tell him? You're staying the night with me? Not specifically you, but he'll figure it out. I'm an adult. I don't have to report everything to him, but I do need to let him know I won't be home. It's just common courtesy. Yeah, I agree, I replied. Is he going to be angry with me? I don't know, she shrugged. I don't really care, do you? Well, I don't want to risk getting in trouble with school or anything, I admitted. She chuckled. He won't be that mad. Don't worry about him. I decided to wait in the Bronco while she went inside. It took about 15 minutes, during which I took out my phone and played Van Halen's When It's Love. Donovan emerged with her bag, tossed it in the back seat, and closed the door just as the synthesizer intro ended. Eddie Van Halen's guitar riff kicked in, and Sammy Hagar started singing. Oh my God, this is my jam, she exclaimed, reaching over to crank up the volume. We rocked out to the classic tune with her singing along in her sweet voice. Sing with me, she demanded. I wasn't much of a singer, but I gave it my all. Pulling into the driveway, we let the song finish playing. Tears welled up in her eyes as it ended. Shaw, this is our song, she declared. When It's Love. Do you believe it is? How do you know when it's love? It's just a feeling you share, I replied. She burst into laughter. I suppose that's the answer, she conceded. Leaning closer, her large eyes made it difficult to focus. Do you feel it? She whispered. I think I do. I ran my fingers through her hair and kissed her. After letting her out of the car, I grabbed her bag and we made our way inside. Keith was already home, engrossed in a game on the PS5. She excitedly noticed he was playing the new Forspoken game. Where'd you get this? She asked. I have my ways, he replied. She sat beside him, watching while I took her bag to my room. I cracked open 2 IPAs and joined them. They had formed a bond, and Keith seemed more at ease around her than usual. He actually conversed with her, a rarity for him. I need to make a quick grocery run, I said. Are you coming or staying, Donovan? I'll stay, she decided. Maybe Keith will let me take a turn. Yeah, I'll clear it for you in a sec, he offered. Need anything, Keith? I inquired. Nah, I'm good. I went for my jog, and upon my return, Donovan was engaged in giving her instructions while playing. I grinned and began preparing dinner. As I worked, I could hear them bickering like children about their next steps. Almost done, she entered the kitchen. Smells delicious, she remarked. What can I help with? Pour some wine, I instructed. The bottle's over there, letting it breathe. And give Keith a shout, tell him we'll be ready in 5 minutes. She informed him. He always required an extra 5 minutes, yet I could hear him saving the game. He tuned in to Donovan. We dined, and Keith gradually realized that Donovan was staying. When the realization fully hit him, he became a bit uneasy and announced he was heading to the nearby gaming spot. I'm heading over to Abe's later, he mentioned. We'll likely play all night and I'll crash there. He did possess a few social skills after all. Donovan and I relaxed on the couch, watching a cheesy horror movie before she rose, pulled me up and led me to the bedroom. I mentioned I was going to shower, and she expressed her desire for one too. You go ahead, she insisted. With shampoo in my hair, I heard the door open and felt a rush of cool air. As I rinsed out the shampoo, I sensed moist skin against my back. That had better not be Keith, I remarked. She giggled from behind. Just little old me, she murmured in my ear. I turned around and saw her. It felt like a punch in the gut. She was breathtaking. I was speechless. Donovan, dressed in her clothes, made a striking impression, but without her she looked like someone from a dream. She threw herself into my arms and we kissed, and it seemed to last forever. I held my breath. We ended up in bed very quickly. She looked like a goddess. I've never met a more amazing woman than Donovan. I never thought I could be with someone like her. What's on your mind? She asked. Oh, Donovan, you're just so incredibly beautiful, I confessed. Stop it. You're making me blush, she replied. I'm serious. You have everything. You can get anyone you want. I mean, anyone will fall in love with you. Your looks alone can bring you millions. She grinned. Thank you, but I'm not interested in just anyone, and I don't want to use my appearance for selfish purposes. I want to be loved for who I am, not for how I look. She reached out to me. I only want you, Shaw. I sat down next to her. I understand. I only want you too. I love you the way you are, believe me. You are incredibly smart, funny, compassionate, warm-hearted, and undoubtedly the most beautiful woman I have ever met. I adore every part of you. Prove it, she whispered, and I had to prove it. We were rarely apart. While she didn't technically reside with me, she still maintained belongings at her dad's place and spent considerable time there. However, the majority of her wardrobe and personal items now found a home in my closet, drawers, and bathroom counter. Though she shared my fondness for Keith, I couldn't shake the feeling that our presence cramped his style, a sentiment he seemed to share. I broached the subject with my dad. expressing my desire for a separate living arrangement. "Are you certain?" he inquired. "Yes," I affirmed. "Donovan essentially lives with me now, and it's starting to inconvenience Keith." Dad had met Donovan and held her in high regard. "Could you wait a week?" he proposed. "What's happening in a week?" I asked. "Well, you know that rental property I own on Placida Meseta Dorada?" "Yeah, what about it?" "The current tenants are relocating to Seattle. It'll be available next week. Let's schedule a visit with Donovan to see if she approves." "Hey, what about me?" I joked. He chuckled. "Listen, buddy, we're both aware that women are what truly matter. You'd camp in a tent with her, sleep in the rain if she requested it." I couldn't help but laugh. "When did you become so insightful? 5 years ago, you were clueless." He laughed. "I'm still clueless. Just ask your mother. But I do know a thing or two." "Dad, what's the rent like for that place?" I inquired. "You must be making a fortune there. Will that put a strain on your finances?" "That's none of your business," he replied. "Seriously, Shaw, I'm fine. You'll inherit a chunk when I'm gone. You and your sister will be set for life. Remember, I want you to focus on your education. Once you've earned your degrees and have a job, you can start supporting yourself. It's my responsibility to give you a head start in life. I'm your father." "I appreciate it, Dad," I assured him. "I do, it's just—" "Don't worry about it. Just promise you won't have me bumped off for the inheritance." I chuckled. I haven't met any hitmen yet. I spoke with Donovan and mentioned that I was considering relocating. "Where to?" she inquired. I informed her. "I don't think I've ever been there," she remarked. I arranged a time that suited her, messaged Dad, and he arranged for us to visit the house leased by the people. As we drove, I noticed her admiring the surroundings. "Wow, Shaw, these places are really nice." "Well, I hope you'll like it," I replied. "It'll be quite a change from my apartment. No Keith, for starters." She chuckled. "Poor Keith. He's losing both his gaming buddies and his roommate." "He'll probably be relieved," I said. "He can lounge around in his boxers, surrounded by 3-day-old pizza boxes with just 2 slices left to snack on." We arrived and her eyes widened. Dad was already there and he came to open her door. "Hey, sweetheart. They're not here, so we can go in and take a look around." "Wow, Oliver, this is the place." She seemed a bit incredulous. He laughed. "Yeah, I bought this property about 20 years ago for next to nothing. 5 years later, it turned into a gold mine. I sold off some lots and used the money to build this place. I initially thought I'd live here, but then I had the opportunity to buy my own home. So I've been leasing this out ever since." We approached the door and Dad unlocked it with his key, stepping aside to let us enter. The interior was stunning, and I caught Donovan's sharp inhale as she absorbed the sight. "Oliver, is this for real?" He chuckled. "Absolutely. However, this furniture belongs to them, so you'll need to get your own." How can we afford that?" she pondered. "Shaw's mother has it covered," Dad reassured her. "She's involved in furniture import, export. She's been preparing for his marriage for years. I know for a fact she has pieces in storage, items she's collected specifically for him and his sister." "But, we're not getting married." Her voice trailed off. "I understand, but will you be living together or not?" She glanced at me with a sense of uncertainty. "Not exactly, Oliver. I still kind of reside with my father. I mean, yeah, we technically share a living space, but I'm far from being ready for marriage or that level of commitment, and I think Shaw feels the same way." "I have a suggestion," I proposed. "What is it?" they both asked. "How about we not stress about this? I'm not going to worry about whether we live together, and I'm not expecting any commitments. Mom won't mind. It'll be just like what we're doing now, except without Keith, and it's much larger." Donovan beamed at me. "I like your thinking. I'll check out the place. Show us around, Oliver." He did. I had some familiarity with the layout. I had been there when Dad was constructing it. But Donovan was thoroughly impressed by the house. "I can't believe it, Shaw," she remarked as we headed home. "Dad's place could fit twice on the first floor." "Exactly," I said. "Does it make you feel intimidated?" "A bit, yeah. I mean, it's amazing that Oliver would even consider it, but wow." We drove over to see Mom, who then took us to her warehouse. It was astonishing. There were various items covered up, and as she removed the covers, Donovan was extremely excited. "Wow, Lydia, where did you acquire all of this?" Mom chuckled. "Mainly from South America," she replied. "Some from Africa and Asia, and a bit from Eastern Europe. It's not as pricey as you might think. I've been attending trade shows for years, and whenever I come across something unique and special, I've been acquiring it and storing it away. Not all of this belongs to you. Some of it is Tobin's." "Well, I'm impressed," Donovan remarked. Mom embraced me. "Shaw, do you trust me to handle the decoration?" Given that it was her profession, I did. "You're more knowledgeable about that than Donovan or I admitted. She had a satisfied grin. "Great, then it's settled." The next week, the tenants were gone, and Mom went back to work. A week later, she informed me that everything was set. We met up with Mom and Dad for dinner, and they showed us what they had accomplished. Mom and Dad's relationship wasn't exactly strained. In reality, they were friends, and I had always believed they loved each other but led separate lives. It was heartening to see them together, and Tobin arrived later with champagne. "Hi, sis," I greeted her with a hug. She and Donovan were close friends and spent a lot of time together. "Hey, bub," she replied, using the nickname she had for me since she was little. "I thought it would be nice to celebrate with a housewarming." Mom brought out champagne flutes and we raised a toast. The place looked fantastic. Although the furniture was a bit sparse, I figured we would gradually furnish it as time and money allowed. It was functional, without a doubt. Donovan's father arrived bearing an incredibly unattractive apern for our dining table. I feigned appreciation, but inwardly cringed at the sight of what resembled a poised tiger ready to pounce. Still, I valued the gesture. He relaxed enough for Donovan to give him a tour, and I sensed he was quietly impressed. Keith used his dad's truck and trailer to deliver our belongings, with even Dr. Mace pitching in to help carry boxes to their designated rooms. After everything was roughly in place, everyone departed, leaving Donovan and me in the unfamiliar space. But our solitude didn't last long. "Want a shower together?" she proposed. I was always going to say yes to that. Our agreement remained unchanged. Donovan would spend 6 out of 7 nights with me, and after classes ended each day, we were always together. Approximately once a week, she would stay overnight at her father's place. Both of us had applied to and been accepted into the graduate program, and we were in our final semester. I was entering the aerospace program while she was pursuing bioengineering. We were both feeling a bit restless, contemplating money and job prospects. My parents contributed money to my account, and Donovan earned some from her university hosting duties, but neither of us felt entirely satisfied with our situations. I was exploring internship opportunities, and she was increasing her involvement in university events. One of the IT guys in our office mentioned attending a university fundraiser while I was half listening. "Let me tell you, there was the most stunning girl there," he said, catching my attention. "Oh, really?" I prompted him. "Yeah, she seemed to be affiliated with the university, but I'd never seen her before." "You wouldn't believe it," he continued. "The alumni were practically queuing up to dance with her. I just wish I could have danced with her and, God, taken her home. I'd die a happy man." "Did someone take her home?" I inquired. "I don't know. Plenty were trying, I can tell you that." That piqued my interest. I decided to casually inquire with Donovan about what was happening that evening. She was preparing for an event. "Hey, hun, I've never really asked you this, but what exactly is your role at these gatherings?" Well, it varies depending on the event, she replied. Sometimes it's a formal dinner where we mingle and network. My main job is to ensure smooth operations, oversee the caterers, accompany Dad to engage with donors and alumni, and introduce guests. Sounds like a drag, I commented. She chuckled. It's not exactly a party, Shaw. It's work. It's not meant to be enjoyable. Most attendees are Dad's age, but I have to make each conversation feel engaging and important. Wow, I had no clue. Are they all like that? Not always. Sometimes there are live bands or orchestras followed by dinner and dancing. What's tonight's event? I inquired. She paused from applying eye makeup to look at me. What's with the interrogation, Shaw? I laughed. No, just curious. No particular reason. Returning to the mirror, she sighed. Just work, she said. Dull stuff. You wouldn't enjoy it. I wandered off to scroll through TikTok, and she later came over to give me a kiss before heading out with a bottle of water. See you in a few hours, she said, giving me another kiss before leaving. I switched on the TV and caught some boxing before the conversation with the IT guy started to gnaw at me. I decided to grab a beer, and as I headed to the kitchen, I spotted Donovan's phone on the counter. She must have left it there while getting her water and forgotten about it. I pondered whether she'd want it back. It occurred to me that she might need it, like if her car broke down or something, so I decided to return it to her. It also gave me a reason, albeit a weak one, to see her. The event was taking place at Lodge on the desert, a place I was somewhat familiar with, having been there a couple of times before. As I entered, it seemed like the event had booked most of the venue, particularly the event rooms. I peeked into a few, but didn't spot Donovan. Music drifted from the palm room, so I peeked inside. There was a jazz ensemble playing, and about 50 couples were dancing while twice as many watched or mingled outside on the lawn. It was quite the lively party. A member of the staff approached me with a tray of champagne glasses and offered me one. No, thank you, I declined. By the way, do you recognize any of the guests? Some, he replied. The university frequently hosts events in these rooms. Do you know who Donovan Mace is? I inquired. Yes, Dr. Mace's daughter, he confirmed. Have you happened to see her around? I questioned further. I have, he responded, gesturing towards the other side of the room. Isn't that her? I adjusted my position to see where he was indicating. It was indeed her. She was dancing by the wall with someone I remembered. He had been a Heisman Trophy candidate a few years ago, a quarterback, and had a brief stint in the NFL. Another alumnus. Thanks, man, I acknowledged before maneuvering around the room, trying to avoid interrupting the dancers. As I approached closer, I grew increasingly unsettled with each step. The way they were dancing was something I would expect her to do with me, not anyone else. He was holding her far too intimately for my liking. His hands were positioned too low. His leg was between hers, pulling her towards him, and he was grinding against her. I halted, stunned, and observed for perhaps a minute. I was infuriated, deeply wounded, and stunned all at once. So this was her behavior at these gatherings? Well, to hell with that. I shrugged off my paralysis and approached them. Her eyes were shut as I drew near, and her companion, catching sight of me and perhaps sensing my expression, half turned her away from me. It's fine, man, I stated. I'm just here to return her phone. Her eyes flew open at the sound of my voice, her mouth forming a surprised O shape under different circumstances, and I pressed her phone into her hand. I heard it clatter to the ground as I walked away, and she called out after me, Shaw. I continued on, exiting the building and heading to my car. I started it up and drove off. I glimpsed her at the entrance, searching for me, and she caught sight of me as I turned onto the street. She took a step forward, her lips moving, but I rounded the corner and left her behind. I drove aimlessly, barely registering my surroundings. My mind felt empty, devoid of thought, as if I were merely operating on autopilot. Halting at a red light, a surge of anger suddenly consumed me, and I erupted in a profanity-laden outburst, pounding my fist against the steering wheel. Somewhere in the background, I sensed a disturbance trying to pierce my consciousness. It turned out to be my phone vibrating on the passenger seat. Glancing at the screen, I saw her name, the Dark Enchantress. That would need to be changed. There was nothing enchanting about my current state. Dismissing the call, I tossed the phone aside. Now I needed to decide where to go next. Going home wasn't an option. She might show up, and I wasn't in the mood to deal with her. Pulling into a Circle K, I entered and grabbed a large Dr. Pepper in a styrofoam cup. As I sat, absent-mindedly sipping my drink, a sudden realization struck me. I hurriedly drove home, packed my tent and camping equipment, and departed. I made a pit stop at the supermarket to fill my coolers with food and drinks, loaded them with ice, and hit the road. One of my beloved spots on Earth was the Poosh Ridge Wilderness. There were still so many places there I hadn't explored, and I was determined to fully immerse myself in the wilderness, clear my mind, and contemplate my next steps. Realizing I should inform my parents that I'd be out of reach, I sent them a text before losing signal. Dad replied, "Okay, have fun." Upon arrival at the parking area, I located a suitable camping spot about a quarter-mile away and informed a ranger of my location. After setting up my tent and arranging the area to my liking, I started a small fire and savored the tequila I had purchased earlier. My mind raced with a million thoughts. Was what I witnessed a typical behavior for Donovan at such events? Did she engage in even more questionable activities? Was it some form of escort service? What I observed didn't pass my girlfriend test, but it left me wondering about her other actions. When she mentioned staying at her dad's place after an event, was it genuine or just a convenient lie to keep me in the dark? I had no clue, and the only way to uncover the truth was to confront her. But could I trust her response? I never believed she would lie to me, and the Donovan I knew seemed incapable of deceit, but witnessing her behavior shattered my assumptions. I felt lost, adrift without direction. The tequila added to my confusion, and I drifted into a troubled sleep, haunted by nightmares of Donovan concealing her actions from me. The next morning I woke up with a slight hangover, but breakfast and some ibuprofen eased my discomfort. I packed up and began my journey down the trail. The scenery was breathtaking, with cool elevations and refreshing streams in the canyon below. I used my wilderness wash to freshen up in the stream. That night mirrored the previous one, leaving me just as uncertain about everything as I had been before. The following day, I ventured upward toward Mount Lemon, scaling a rocky slope to keep my thoughts occupied. Upon my return, dusk had nearly settled, and as I entered the small clearing, there was Donovan, seated on a boulder, her face buried in her hands, seemingly in tears. Damn. My presence must have alerted her, for she looked up and spotted me. Springing to her feet, she dashed across the camp, throwing herself at me and nearly knocking me over. "Damn you, Shaw!" she yelled into my face, then enveloped me in a tight hug before unleashing her frustrations once more. "What the hell were you thinking? You can't just disappear like that. You can't just discard me." Her fists pounded against my chest. I needed to talk. "Why did you leave?" "How did you find me?" I inquired. "Your dad informed me you were up here," she shouted. "I was worried sick, so I pressed him until he divulged your whereabouts. When I arrived, the ranger directed me to you, except you weren't here." Tears streamed down her face as she clung to me again, seeking solace. "Where were you?" "I was out hiking," I replied. "I didn't want to see you, Donovan. That's why I came here." "Forget that," she retorted. "I needed to find you." "Why didn't you, why?" "Donovan, please," I interjected. "Stop shouting. Let's get a fire going. I'm famished. Have you eaten?" She held on to me for another moment, regaining composure. "No, and I'm not hungry. I haven't been able to eat for 2 days. Why did you—" I interjected, pause. I won't engage until you regain composure and communicate rationally. Let's cook something to eat, share a meal, have a drink, cozy up by the fire, and converse. All right?" She sniffled, wiped her tears, and nodded, her voluminous hair swaying. "All right." I fried bacon and made scrambled eggs. Initially, she picked at her food, but then she devoured it eagerly, fixing herself 2 more eggs and extra bacon. "I must have been famished," she remarked. "I can imagine. Not eating for 2 days," I replied. "I couldn't stomach anything," she confessed. "Felt sick all the time." I didn't know how to respond, so I stayed silent. "Well, I didn't anticipate to," I remarked. "I'll run out of food soon." "I'll restock," she assured. After we finished eating, I brought out the tequila bottle and poured us each a drink in tin cups. I found a large flat rock near the fire and settled on it. She stood in front of me and told me to move back. I complied, and she sat between my legs, leaning back against me as we gazed into the flickering flames in silence for a moment. Feeling the tension, I spoke up. "Donovan." "Let me speak first," she interrupted. "Then you can respond, all right?" "All right," I agreed. "But spare me any lies, Donovan. I'm not in the mood for them." "I won't lie," she assured me. "Firstly, Shaw, I want you to know that I've only been with you since the day we met." She glanced up at me. "Do you believe me?" Sensing my hesitation, her eyes welled with tears. "You don't, do you?" "I'm not saying I don't believe you," I clarified. "I'm just saying I'm reserving judgment until I hear more from you." "What does that mean?" Her voice held a hint of frustration. "It means I'm taking your words seriously, but I need more context," I explained. "Your further explanation might sway me one way or the other." "If you're not going to trust me, then I don't see the point in talking," she responded bitterly. "What's the use?" "That's for you to decide," I replied. She rose and approached the perimeter of the fire's glow, then halted, casting a glance back. "I'm sorry, Shaw. I love you, and I believed you were the one. But I can't stay with someone who doubts me." "I trusted you," I replied. "You're the one who planted the seeds of doubt." She lowered her head, a gesture of apparent surrender, and vanished into the encroaching darkness. I lingered in the wilderness for 5 days before returning home. I sensed her absence immediately. Her belongings, the photos, delicate fabrics, chargers strewn around the house, were all gone. Her clothes, books, papers, even the cosmetics that cluttered the vanities and dressers vanished. It was crushing. 2 years with someone leaves a void when they depart. I didn't blame myself, but the emptiness of the house was palpable. I had been open to her perspective, yet I couldn't ignore the evidence that contradicted my beliefs. I existed in a state of limbo, going through the motions of my former life, but everything felt diminished. My world had been vibrant, but now it seemed drained of color, faded to shades of gray. I used to notice things, hear things, do things, and immediately think Donovan would enjoy them. Then it would hit me. There was no Donovan. It was incredibly depressing. The only things keeping me grounded were school, my family, and Tobin. I'd always been close to my little sister, but we grew even closer during that time. She stuck by me constantly. I knew she was good friends with Donovan, but she never brought him up. Dad seemed disappointed with how things turned out, and Mom didn't hold back. "Shaw, you're being foolish," she told me about a week after Donovan disappeared. "Probably, but what specifically foolish thing am I doing?" I asked. "That girl cares about you," she said. "I had lunch with her, Shaw. It's not what you think, but she's not going to plead with you. That's not her style. You're letting something small ruin something beautiful in your life. You need to sort this out." "Why do I have to be the one to sort it out?" I asked. "I didn't cause the problem." "I'm not saying it's all your fault or even mostly your fault," she said. "But I'm saying it's worth fixing. even if you have to be the one to make the first move. I know you want what's best for me, Mom, I said. Yes, I do. I won't bring this up again. I secured the paid internship I had been eagerly anticipating at Honeywell. While it didn't come with a hefty paycheck, it was more than I had ever earned before, and they appreciated my work. Within 6 months, I received a job offer upon completing my master's degree. Despite attending the same school and sharing the same campus, I only caught glimpses of Donovan from a distance. If she spotted me, she would wave, and I would reciprocate with a smile and a thumbs up. In a subtle manner, my mom and Tobin informed me that Donovan had stopped working for her father as a hostess and had embarked on an internship with Nuvox, focusing on a specialized oxygen delivery system. I felt genuinely proud of her. Though we didn't converse, I frequently encountered her. Each time I was reminded of how much I missed her, and it felt like a continuous ache. After 18 months, we finally exchanged words at the hooding ceremony. Among the engineering graduates, numbering just over 100, I was seated when someone sat beside me. Turning, I saw Donovan. She still had the power to leave me breathless, perhaps even more so than the day we first met. She flashed me a smile. "Hi, Shaw. Congratulations. You made it." "Congratulations to you, too. Did your internship lead to a job offer?" I asked. "Yes, they did offer me a position," she replied. "But I declined. Protein Technologies presented a better offer, and it's in a more challenging field. What about you?" "I'm sticking with Honeywell," I answered. The ceremony commenced, rendering conversation impossible. Later, I departed and didn't encounter her again until graduation. Once more, she chose to sit beside me. The event dragged on endlessly, equally tedious. Yet we found ourselves back in our seats once it concluded. My parents and Tobin were all present, showering us with congratulations. Dad insisted on treating us to dinner. Donovan shot me a questioning look, to which I subtly nodded in agreement. We enjoyed ourselves, indulging in 3 bottles of wine between us. Donovan mentioned needing to leave. "I should walk a bit before driving," she remarked. "Care to join?" Feeling similarly unready to drive, I accepted. As we were near campus, we strolled in that direction. Our conversation was awkward, punctuated by a few meaningless remarks. Eventually, she paused at a fountain, motioning for me to sit beside her. I settled into my seat, feeling a bit uneasy. She chuckled. "Nerves getting to you, big boy?" I laughed. "Yeah, maybe a bit." "Don't worry," she reassured me. "I'm not going to devour you." I gave her a skeptical look. "Are you sure?" "I'd like to," she admitted. "But I think you'd be a tough one to chew right now." "That's a metaphor?" I inquired. She nodded. "Yeah, you're quite the stubborn one, Shaw." I chuckled. "So I've been told. Are you referring to a specific instance of stubbornness or just my general demeanor?" "Both," she replied. "Do you miss me, Shaw?" "Every single day," I confessed. "I miss you too," she admitted. "God, Shaw, you were my best friend. We were friends before. Everything happened. You were my rock. I miss that, don't you?" "I do," I assured her. "Then why the hell haven't you reached out, made any effort to talk to me?" she demanded. "I could ask you the same," I retorted. "Shaw, I tried. I searched for you, tried to reconcile. It didn't go well, and I was too ashamed to try again," she explained. "All right, can you tell me why you were ashamed?" I questioned. "I felt like I had let you down, let myself down. I know I kept some things from you," she admitted. "Remember how you acted at those university events?" "Yeah," she replied, followed by an uncomfortable silence. "I wonder if you grasp how I felt when I entered, and—" "I'd like to address that, but there's a slight problem," she interjected. "All right. What's the problem?" "Do you suspect I'd deceive you?" she questioned. "Do you truly believe that? Look at me, Shaw." I shifted slightly and peered into her large brown eyes. Tears glistened within them, the sunset casting them a golden hue. I knew she wouldn't deceive me. "It's not that I think you'd outright lie," I explained, "but there's some history here. Will you omit details, ones that might not paint you in the best light?" "You did that, Donovan. I never doubted you. I never would have. I must admit I wasn't completely truthful with you, or even with myself." I recounted the conversation I had with my colleague. "Oh my God, why didn't you say anything?" "Well, it seemed paranoid. I was embarrassed. I thought it might upset you, and I sort of felt like you'd have every right to be upset. So when I noticed you'd left your phone behind, I used it as an excuse to leave. I didn't expect to discover—" I trailed off, and she sat there quietly for a moment, clearly pondering her response. Then another thought crossed my mind. "When you asked if I believed you would deceive me, no, I never thought you would. My issue is, while I never once doubted you, I was completely in the dark about your role in those events, and you never disclosed it to me. It wasn't precisely a lie, but it wasn't exactly the truth either. Even now, I'm still unclear." She nibbled on her lip, her hands visibly shaking as she clasped them together. Exhaling heavily, she spoke. "I won't withhold anything. I won't deceive you. I'll reveal everything. Should we do this here?" "What do you suggest?" I inquired. "Shaw, I want our friendship back," she declared. "Whether we become lovers again or not, that's uncertain. Can we just spend time together like we used to? I want to visit your place, chat with you, just be near you. I'm eager to share everything, but I'd prefer it to happen naturally. Can I come over tomorrow and bring dinner?" "Yeah, that sounds good," I agreed. "Donovan?" "What?" She lifted her gaze to meet mine. "I just want you to know that I've missed you. I've been realizing I've been foolish. I'd go to great lengths for you, overlook all sorts of things, even live in a remote cabin. I love you." She swiftly settled into my lap, her lips pressing against mine, her arms encircling me tightly. "No, Shaw. You shouldn't feel like that. I'd do anything to be with you. I understand now, but I need to sort things out, to make them right." "Let's do that," I replied. She helped me up, and I escorted her to her car. As I opened her door, she gazed up at me through her long, thick lashes. "Shaw, can I have my key back?" I chuckled, retrieved my keys from my pocket, and handed her the house key. "Remember the security code?" "I do," she affirmed. "I'll see you tomorrow evening." She rose on tiptoe, planted a quick kiss on my lips, and then vanished. After finishing work, I stopped to purchase her favorite Cabernet, along with a cheesecake and a yellow rose. Her car was parked in the driveway, and the aroma of cooking greeted me as I entered the house. It smelled delightful, with garlic and oregano filling the air. I put away my bag and headed to the kitchen. I knew she was aware of my presence. She must have heard me deactivate the security system. But she was occupied, and seeing her took my breath away. She wore a charming yellow dress, her hair styled in a messy bun that revealed her elegant neck, with her shoulders bare. The dress barely covered her stunning figure, and she wore strappy platform sandals that accentuated her gorgeous legs. I approached her from behind, gently encircling her in my arms, planting a kiss on the side of her neck, and then delicately brushing her cheek with the rose I held. She glanced upwards and back at me, a hint of shyness in her expression, before offering a tentative smile. "Hi, Shaw. The rose is lovely. Dinner will be ready in 30. Do you need to freshen up?" "Hello, gorgeous," I replied. "Sure, let me take a quick shower. The aroma is enticing, by the way." Giving her a squeeze, I headed off to tidy up. The dinner was just as appetizing as it smelled, yet there was an underlying awkwardness. We engaged in trivial conversation, and once we finished, I tidied while she poured wine and brought our glasses to the sofa. Seated beside her, she nestled in close to me. I draped my arm around her, relishing the warmth of her skin beneath my fingertips like molten silk. She let out a contented sigh. Shaw, this feels so right. I've missed this so much. Just being able to touch you, talk to you, knowing that you want to. Me too, I admitted. I've been utterly miserable, Donovan. Me too. The real question is, are we going to remain miserable? I'm willing to entertain any ideas to avoid that, I responded. Do you have any ideas? She inquired. Perhaps. And you? Yes. I'm going to lay everything out for you. Some of it you might not like. I propped my feet up on the ottoman while she reclined, resting her head on my arm and extending her legs onto mine. I recalled that this was one of her preferred activities. Go ahead, I prompted. First, I want to assure you that I won't deceive or hide anything, all right? I nodded. I trust you. All right. Shaw, when I was around 18, I started working as a hostess at university fundraisers where Dad served as the administrator. The university relied on donations from alumni. You're aware of that, right? I'm not very knowledgeable about it, I admitted. I know it's a common practice, but I'm unsure about the breakdown of a university's budget between tuition, public funding, and other sources, including donations. 7% of the university's budget comes from donations, she informed me. It may not sound significant, but considering it's a $2.3 billion budget, wow, I had no idea. Most people don't. So fundraising is quite important. I see. My role was to ensure the smooth execution of the fundraisers. I tried to persuade people to contribute financially. It didn't seem like mere persuasion to me, I remarked. No, that's not how it was. I promise, Shaw. Dancing was my only involvement. All right. It was a bit suggestive and... God, it's embarrassing to admit I may have given some of the donors the wrong idea. It's shameful to confess this to you, but I assure you it was never going beyond an impression. There's no one else for me. It was never going to progress beyond what it was. Well, it's rather distasteful, wouldn't you agree, Donovan? Yes, it is. I never really considered it, Shaw, I swear, until I saw the look on your face. Now I'm starting to question your honesty. If you never considered it, why let me believe you were merely supervising the waitstaff? She sighed. I'm not deceiving you. There was a pause. I suppose I was deceiving myself. I didn't tell you because I was lying to myself, convincing myself I was doing something good, helping my father, raising funds for the university. I guess deep down I knew it was shady, so I kept it hidden from myself, and from you. I nodded. Yes, I comprehend. I attempt to conceal my shortcomings from others, as well as from myself. I ceased that night, Shaw. I'm not particularly proud of myself for ever going beyond overseeing the waitstaff, as you described it. When that guy you worked with recounted that story to you, why didn't you confront me, hash it out with me? She inquired. That's simple, I replied. I'm in love with you, Donovan. I convinced myself I was just being paranoid, irrational. You couldn't possibly do anything wrong in my eyes. You were flawless. I wanted to punch that guy in the mouth for even suggesting you might be involved in anything shady. Suddenly tears streamed down her face, her agony causing her body to convulse. I embraced her tightly, pulling her close to me as she released her pain. It felt like hours passed, our emotions raw and intense. I'm sorry I couldn't live up to your expectations, she finally managed to say, amid sobs. I'm sorry I shattered the image you had of me. I lifted her onto my lap, holding her close as I reached for a box of tissues, handing them to her. Damn it, Donovan. I'm far from perfect myself. I've been foolish too. I hate what happened. But I was stupid and you weren't much better. We almost let this ruin something beautiful. Believe me, I still see you as perfect. You're just human, that's all. Humans mess up. If they didn't, there would be no books, no movies. I know. she whispered. I've been miserable without you, Shaw. What can I do to make things right? What can we do? We're doing it, I replied. I should have done this months ago. I'm not good at confrontations. That's something I need to work on. Me too, she admitted. I was even more foolish. You don't know how many times I wanted to call you but couldn't bring myself to do it. I've read our old texts just to hear your voice in my head. I held her tighter. Well, we'll have plenty of real conversations now. She managed a small, tearful laugh. I'll keep the texts anyway. Difficulties have arisen along the way. We renewed our friendship that was before we first became close, moved forward cautiously, spent a lot of time together, and that comfortable intimacy returned. I was a little careful, realizing that I hadn't fully understood this before, but she tried to calm me down. She was as charming as ever, and being around her felt like I was slowly falling under the spell. The overwhelming euphoria I felt when she touched me was very strong, and she remained the same charming, kind girl I first met in Professor Wade's class. I was sure she was ready for intimacy long before me, and she was driving me crazy with the desire to be with her. Her choice of attire, or lack thereof, made her intentions clear. Our careers were moving forward, although we found that we were spending more time at work than we would have liked. As soon as she revived our intimacy, we felt like she was making up for lost time. She returned to our house without hesitation, this time leaving none of her belongings at her father's house. A year and a half after her return, I proposed to her in an expensive restaurant, put a ring on her finger, and asked her to marry me. Her joyful reaction, accompanied by screeching and festive dancing, drew applause from the restaurant's customers. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes, she exclaimed. I've dreamed of marrying you, Shaw. After her initial excitement subsided, she became more serious and expressed a desire to extend the engagement. I want us to have a strong relationship, she explained, looking at her ring. I want your trust to be unshakable, like a solid foundation, and I'm still working on earning it, you know? I trust you completely, Donovan, I assured her. I've always trusted you. If you want to extend the cooperation, I don't mind, but not out of doubt. How about 6 months? Let's hold out for 18 months, she suggested. We settled on a year. 8 years later, we have 2 miniature versions of Donovan. One is 4, and the other is 2. We purchased the house from my father, and now I return home to find 2 little girls eagerly waiting for Daddy on the front porch every day. In just a moment, their mother will arrive, and I know her sight will steal my breath away, just as it did the first time I laid eyes on her. The girls and I sat in the bustling, noisy restaurant. Suddenly, there was a brief silence, a pause in the clamor. I glanced towards the entrance, knowing the reason, and there she was. She made her way to our table, and as soon as she sat down, the conversation resumed. She kissed me and then turned to the kids. Did Mama's little ones have a fantastic day? Everything felt perfect in that moment. When it's love, everything always feels right.